Welcome to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are available in podcast form. You can pick them up at artistfirst.com. We welcome your questions and comments by email. Hit us up at dj@artistfirst.com. Now, out to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, Z-Man. And we've just got power back this moment.
Stop.
Trust is dead. Trust is not dead.
No, it's not.
Margaret was going to correct me, and then the power went out.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm Michael Lyons. I'm getting the look already. It's early.
And I'm Margaret.
And she's Margaret. Luckily, she's on the other side of the room.
Yep. Thank goodness.
Thank goodness. And but tonight's topic is sort of it's not the same as last week in any way, shape, or form. But the interesting thing about it is we also are talking a little bit about trust. Do you want to read the quote? This was a topic you came up with.
Oh. Okay. I can.
Or give a little context about this gentleman, maybe too.
Well, the quote is from Alan Watts, who basically was an Englishman who had turned into a Zen Buddhist and basically began teaching Zen Buddhism in New York, I believe.
This was in the 30s and 40s and all the way up to the 70s, I guess.
Right. He was one of the earlier pioneers of bringing this concept to America.
Yeah.
To America. Okay. The quote is, "If you cannot trust yourself, you cannot even trust your mistrust of yourself. So that without this underlying trust in the whole system of nature, you are simply paralyzed."
And it's such a pithy quote. You have to kind of unwind it. But what my take on it was what he was basically saying is that your interface to all of reality is through whatever senses you have. We can argue about how many senses there are, but if you only had one, your interface to all of reality would be that sense, and the abstraction of knowledge that you get is a reflection of how it impinges upon you, both your physical you and your ego you and your soul you and your spirit you. It all has to come in and be then understood at the you level. It's an individual perception.
Yes, it goes back to the basic experience that we have as human beings in how we interact with the world. If I might, I'm going to just read this little excerpt from Alan Watts, which I thought was very interesting. He basically is trying to find a common ground to bring people that he's speaking with along. He was basically talking about meditation in general and what it actually is. But in order to do that, he had to lay the groundwork of what the Western mindset is. So let me just read this. Your brain and all that goes with it is translating whatever things in the outside world, into states of itself, called color, shape, weight, texture, and so on. So all that you see is you, really, physically. But also, one must add to this that one of the things in the external world is you. So you are both outside and inside. You are something of nature, but all that you know of nature is you. So this experience of being aware that all the perceptions that you are having, the color, the texture, shape, this is being processed by you, by your brain, and filtered. And then there is that experience of you perceiving all that information. So
you perceiving yourself, perceiving, if you will.
Right. It's you perceiving you, or your concept of you that you've just put together from all the information that you just gathered. And that state, being in that state, is a precursor to stilling the mental part of you that wants to judge whether or not something has to be done now, or this is more important than that, which is better, which is worse. All that is all mental noise. So that was what he was trying to set as a baseline before going into meditation, or what meditation is.
And this concept that you're talking about with trust, the takeaway that he was saying in essence was that there is an objective reality which we cannot know directly.
Correct.
We only know it in as much it impinges and in some ways changes us. And I won't go into it in any great detail, but this is actually even worse than it was known in his time, because the current the current cutting edge of scientific thought is that nothing exists. In absolute terms, it's all babytown nonsense. And the math is solid, and the edges of our knowledge, which is really, we're talking all the way out of the edges of what physics has been able to tell us so far. And what physics has been able to tell us so far is that none of it's real. which is in itself awesome, because in essence we pushed ourselves all the way out to the boundary of this is real, this is real, this is real, this is real. We got all the way to the edge, we go, wow, there's nothing out there whatsoever. So now physics has caught up with where the mystics were about 2,000 years ago. There's nothing out there.
Right.
However, there is you, and there's me, and there's all the rest of us. And as perceiving parts of reality which are able to perceive that they're perceiving, which is
amazing.
A little flying up its own butt, but it's true.
It's true.
It's turtles all the way down. As perceiving parts of reality that are able to perceive that they're perceiving, we functionally create reality. Now, we don't absolutely create reality. We have no control over reality at all. The thing is, what we are creating is our best perception of something which is, in essence, not directly perceivable at all. Not directly perceivable. It can only be perceived in this kind of flying up its own self kind of way. So, the old, we've talked about this many times, that the dream, the common dream, is not only a wonderful philosophical concept. It looks like it's stone cold true.
It's a piece of truth within the illusion.
The whole, I forget what it is, but it's Brahma opens his eyes, the lotus springs up, the Brahman sits on the lotus, and then the universe is born. Pretty much that's it. Just put math in front of it, and then you're good, because that's what we're talking about here. So what we call reality is distilled into ourselves and shared among all of ourselves. And we might as well call it dreaming the common dream, because that's what it is. So, Alan, in trying to translate this, does what you said he was doing. In essence, he was laying the groundwork. And one of the things that this particular statement says, the one that we're talking about tonight, and also the ones that you wrote down, if you cannot trust yourself, you have to kind of start right there. You say, well, look, what I'm getting is objectively real. It's objectively true. For me, it's my perception. If you try to fly up your own self one too many times and you say, well, I can't trust anything and nothing is actually real, you are then therefore paralyzed, because you cannot even trust your mistrust of yourself. Because that in and of itself is part of the reality that you are inherently trusting. So it gets very... yeah, go ahead.
Well, if you basically make the statement to yourself that, okay, I can't trust me, which means that I can't trust any judgment I make, which means that I can't trust what I just said. This is the classic, it's just a classic mental exercise of like, okay, can we just say that I don't know everything and start there?
Right. You have to come to terms with the paradox.
Mm-hmm.
And the paradox is you are both irredeemably flawed and utterly perfect at the same time.
Mm-hmm. The mystery.
Your perceptions of you perceiving you, which is what we're all doing at all times, which is why your brain just is so tired all the time, because it's perceiving this, it's perceiving.
Overdrive.
It's in overdrive because it's trying to do all these things at once, and have a cogent conversation. And that exercise of reducing the infinite into something that you can actually reflect. We are reflections of the infinite. Reducing the infinite to something that you can actually contain and reflect is an incredibly difficult thing. Consciousness is not easy, yet once it has been achieved, it has the unenviable task of knowing that it can't know everything, and then knowing that it can't know everything, and going around and around and around again. And at one point you have to just stop and say, okay, I'm coming to terms with this. I'm okay with the mystery, and I'm just going to live my life and have a sandwich.
Right.
Otherwise, you're paralyzed.
Right. You are given the point where you have the power to make a decision about this, and the decision is: do I become paralyzed because I can't get out of this chasing my tail thought pattern, or do I eat something? Eat something, you'll feel better. And this is the human. If you think about it, no other animal in this world comes to this point.
We're the only ones who worry about this stuff.
Well, this is just being in that paralyzed mode is the worry part. And it's understanding that the tendency, this is a very subtle trap.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Do you take power over your own moment, or do you allow yourself to be overwhelmed by everything that's going on in the outside world?
Well, and and constantly, the constant exercise of mistrust will paralyze you, because you're literally saying, can I, and you're just backing up. You're just, you just.
Well, you're basing your concept of trust or trusting yourself on whether or not you can understand everything, which is just in itself impossible.
Right.
Because you can't understand everything. So you have to give that up.
I mean, there's two classic traps here, right? There's the trap of nihilism, which is that one. Nothing is knowable. And then there's the trap of the narcissism. It's not really, but it's like there is no one else but me, and there is no other reality, and I'm the only reality. Those are two traps here. The trap of nihilism is that nothing matters, and it's all meaningless.
Well, that's when you mistrust everything.
Right.
When you've decided that you're just going to mistrust everything, then there's nothing to live for.
Yes.
It's just given up completely.
Given up completely. And the other one is complete narcissism. It's complete focus on only the I. And in essence, everything is relative. There is no absolutes. There is no reality. It's just me, me, me.
I can only know the universe through me, me, me.
Right.
This is your starting point, and someone has fired off the start gun, and you're still standing there.
Right. Constantly.
You're in a spin. You're running in this tight little circle.
And to degrees, we all know people who suffer from both of these things. There's both these traps. The sane position is to realize that you can't be sane, and just, to put it mildly, F it and move on. Just the purpose of reality is not to validate infinity or to try. The purpose of reality is experience, and we've talked about this. What we're really coming down to is that this reality, in the best scientific approximation, doesn't really exist. Period. End of story.
Well,
we've already gotten there, all the way to the end, and we've said there's nothing. We've gotten to the last turtle, and there's nothing under that turtle, and by the way, all the other turtles are gone too, and we don't know what happened. There are no turtles.
Well, okay, if we reduce it down to the fact that only 5% of the matter we see in the universe we can account for.
Right. And it gets worse than that, but yes.
Well, that means it's just there's a huge percentage. 70% is dark energy or unseen energy.
Right.
And then it was another.
I think it was 20%. It was like 90% of the
25% was dark matter, which is unseen matter.
Right.
Okay. So what we can account for, which means that what we can grasp or understand or interact with, and this is really what we can interact with in some way in this world, is only 5% of what the universe is made out of. And in probability, that just means you're an error factor, plus or minus 5%. You're just you don't really exist, but you think you do.
but isn't that the most important part? In essence, this place.
Okay, let me just. Can I finish that? According to the scientific community,
yes,
you really don't exist.
Nope.
You only think you do. Okay, I want to qualify that.
It sounds like sophomore philosophy, but it is stone cold scientific fact.
Right. All the equations are showing this, and I love that what they had hoped was the grand unified standard model, I believe it's called. You see this equation, and it takes into account all the forces of nature and all the
everything
and the matter and da da da. But it only accounts for that 5%. So you're just like, okay, do you understand, people, that what we've been doing is been describing things that we can see and hear and touch and think about. Just what we happen to be interacting with in this moment. Where we happen to be, just that it's all descriptions. Math is descriptions of things that you see, processes you see, surfaces, curves. It's just a shorthand method for describing something. Just as when you are looking at the world and trying to understand it, you translate the world into color and texture and shape, you know, the states of what's out there. Those are descriptions that we give because we are the ones interacting. It's coming from us. This ability, which is like, how is it possible that we can do this? Well, no animals worry about this.
Well, and I think, that's the same kernel that I was going for. So I'll say it. So you just so the part of us that describes whatever it is, whether it's math or color, the part of us that describes is the part which is not. It is not of this thing that we call reality. It is out of reality. It is the part that describes and in some ways manifests reality because of the description. The description, which is your interface of you as reality maps onto you, that description is what you bring back. It is your experiences. It is also, in essence, the common experience. But that whole thing is out of the Babytown nonsense soup, which doesn't really exist by the best scientific description. Does not exist in the same way that the description does. Well, reality is our description.
Right. We are describing the seen matter or the seen stuff of the universe. And the rest of it is what they say dark, is unseen. So most of it is all unseen.
I think you're right, but it's even worse than that, in the sense that even what we call dark matter and dark energy are in and of themselves manifestations of something which is even more subtle. We saw it the other night, but in essence what they are entangled states of a field, of many fields.
Right.
And all those entangled states of fields create this. Let's just say this. All we have here, as far as the best science can tell, and this isn't philosophy or, sitting in a coffee shop, this is the best science can tell, is that we have entangled fields at a level so far beyond what we call reality that it is indescribable. What we have built up on top of that, many, 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 many layers before we even start to perceive it, are the interactions. We get here, and our perceptions describe all of that into something that we can experience, and that experience is what we bring back. So let's put it into our actual plane, the one that we talk about. The spirit, that which is beyond all things, that which is at the root of all this, is translated into this in an interface, a consciousness. And that consciousness requires many things of the fields. It creates a reality which we can perceive and experience and live in for a period of time, which, again, time. There's a thing. We'll call it life.
Call it what?
Life.
Life?
Life. A life happens. It happens in a thing we call time while we're here. It happens in a thing we call space while we're here. It happens with all these other interactions of all these fields while we're here, and then we go back. What we bring back is our perception, our description of that incredible interaction of fields, which made up the time, the space, and everything else.
Bring back where?
Well, that's a great question.
Okay, but it's got to be clarified.
From spirit into soul and flesh, and back to spirit. That's the eternity, which
All right,
is
so
beyond.
you're talking about after we've interacted with this particular realm and returning back from whence our spirit, our soul came from.
Right. And to me, we talk about this thing have a beginning and perhaps some end. But the thing that we're coming from is beyond beginnings and ends. It's beyond this knotted up fields. But it's someplace which we need to come here, dream the common dream, and then return with those experiences. That's what this place is. It's a giant sandbox.
We are going back to the NDEs, or near-death experiences. The common thread that people come back with is that I went there and I had my life review. I looked at it and I decided that I have to go back. Mm-hmm. Even though it's going to hurt like heck, I have to go back because I didn't finish what I came here for.
Right.
And some people say I was told that I wouldn't be able to come back to work on that again. So I decided to come back even though it hurt. My body, whether it was an accident or whatever. But it's understanding that there is this agreement that your soul understands that there are things that it needs to process, it needs to understand and learn, and it agrees to do that. And the overriding thrust of it, usually at the base of returning, is that there is a great love that is felt, whether it's family or partner or the task. The heart is saying, this has got to be done. This is an expression of the love that you are. So go back, finish this.
And the this doesn't have anything to do with reality. It has to do with completion of the individual's
task.
Next step, whatever. Well,
the heart. It's the next heart task, right? Because the heart is the overriding guide to this. And in that other realm, time does not exist. So things are governed by events. So an event becomes the next important thing to unfold in your life. It's not a time, right, but an event. And that's a whole different way of thinking.
Yes. And that way of thinking, that consciousness way of thinking, is very different from the temporal, which is what we get bound up here in. And we're going to be bound up in the temporal right now because we just reached the end of the first half hour. So let's go back to the studio, but you can trust that the reality will come back on the other side.
The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief Dev is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lynes is Book 1 of the adventures of Devkalion, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time.
Hi, this is Hannah Ruth from the band Wild Hum. Check out our new Americana Soul CD, Wild Hum, at our website, wildhummusic.com. And you are listening to the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Thank you.
The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lynes, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read. Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
Thanks for joining us on The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Back to your co-hosts, Michael and Margaret Lynes.
Thank you very much, D-Man. And you are perceiving the perceptions that you're perceiving correctly. We're back, like we never left.
We are.
Here we are, and you can trust that. But we're talking tonight. In some ways, we're talking tonight about the nature of reality. But it's the nature of reality is something that you can end up just sitting and spinning around, and the actual sanest thing is to not worry too much about the nature of reality, because we can't get there. And this isn't some sort of just giving up on the whole idea because it's too hard. No, what it is that we've pushed our knowledge out to the very limits, out to the edges of what is, and we've found that there isn't, that the objective reality does not in itself exist. It is a projection. It is a hologram. It is really an interaction of things which are beyond perception, which are interacting at a very subtle level, beyond all matter, beyond all energy, at a very subtle level. and producing all the other effects that, again, even all those effects are then filtered, as Margaret said earlier in the last half hour, they're filtered into what is us. We objectively describe reality in subjective terms, in the terms that we can perceive. And then when we all are together, and this is everything, but really the consciousness that we possess has the ability both to perceive that it is perceiving that it is perceiving, and also to perceive that other consciousnesses exist with this same ability. And therein lies the common dream. I perceive that you are perceiving, and vice versa. And so we validate each other in one regard, and we interact, and we have the ability to enhance our shared description of reality. You have an individual description of reality which is uniquely yours. You have a shared description of reality, which is you perceiving that you are being perceived. The language fails because it's incredibly and inherently recursive, and it also fails in that it doesn't properly describe. But it's the best we've got. It's all we've got.
Well, actually, if you go into experiences, you want to engage. Sharing in any experience at all is an expansion of your consciousness. And that's the reason why we're here together, to help each other expand past ways that have locked us in for the longest time. Now, the interesting thing is that there are certain people that don't want any kind of expansion because I know the way the world works, it's going to work this way, and they're gathering all these people together to say, hey, we're going to hold this. This is the way the world works, and it's only this way. You can't think of it any other way. And the interesting thing about this world is that you're quite free to have any opinion you want.
Yes.
Because your world is your world, and that is part of the experience down here. Allowing that freedom to understand what freedom actually means and what it actually entails when you are coexisting with a bunch of other people.
I love what you said, because let me just put a different spin on it. This is our sandbox. We are allowed to build castles. We're allowed to build realities. You can't do it in the absolute. You can't do it in the place that all spirit comes from, because that is the true reality, and it is not mutable. It is. It is. It is being. It is absolute being. It is. I am who am. That's it. There ain't nothing more. But here, it's a sandbox. It's fungible. We get to play. We get to interact. We get to describe ourselves, describing ourselves, and then what do you think about me? We go back and forth. And that freedom is because this is a mutable place. It is not immutable. It's not absolute. It is, in fact, nothing. Just a lot of interactions and a lot of descriptions. And that's the very definition of a place where you put children and you let them play and learn and evolve and become and move themselves towards a higher being, which can remain in the absolute.
Mm-hmm. To allow that. And if you think about just the basic pattern, how life unfolds, when you're born, you have to, first of all, begin to realize that you and mom are two different people. Because when you're teeny tiny, you're thinking, this is all me.
Mm-hmm.
But then you realize that there is a greater world out there. But it's all done through your own perceptions or your own ability to communicate to all the other members of your family. So you are in that child-adult relationship, and it is love that binds you together.
Yes.
As you mature, that role switches, and you begin to love others equal to you, and then it switches again to loving those that are younger than you or weaker than you, your own children. And understanding that those levels, what you're doing is you're changing perspective every single time. And it, as a base, what's being used is that ability to interpret or translate everything around you into your color, your shape, and your texture.
Mm-hmm.
But now you're doing it focused on you, focused on another, focused on differences of position or placement in your world. What does it mean to be weak? What does it mean to be strong? What does it mean to be... Suddenly, this whole range of experiences unfolds. And that is the core or kernel of understanding what love actually is. The love that you feel is changing perspective. So therefore, its color and texture and shape has changed. Your position has changed. It's taking all that in through the eyes of love. And once you really experience this interaction, these interactions, multiple, you begin to expand further and realize that everyone has this. You and the other, there's nothing different. You are the same. Just as when you're interacting with nature, again, different perceptions, and you share that with each other. But you and everything around you are one. You're all part of the same 5% of the perceivable universe.
Yeah.
And therein lies the hologram.
It is a wondrous place because it all is, drinking it in through your consciousness and then modifying your consciousness. So let's go back just briefly because we don't have a ton of time, but Alan Watts was laying this as groundwork. He was trying to break the mold, trying to show people that without having the same mathematics that we now have today and understanding that he was totally, completely, absolutely right, there is nothing, that just in intuition alone, he was saying that this is the way, and that the ultimate goal of meditation was to realize that you were describing, that you realize that you are the interface, to realize that it is both an objective reality and a consciousness within it. And that the objective reality drops away, and then it's just the consciousness. Right. And meditation first describes the separation. That you are not the object, you are the consciousness. And then then you, through meditation, come to the point where you say, it is just the consciousness. And that the description is important, but it is not to be judged, it is not to be interacted with in the way of identity, it is to be perceived. Perception. Consciousness is in and of itself an end. Perception is a thing consciousness does. And then therefore all reality blossoms from that perception. Yet reality in and of itself doesn't exist. It doesn't have its own consciousness. Consciousness is existence. Reality is just stuff.
Well, it's also understanding that it's an agreed upon reality, which that's a mind blower for the most people part, because we've all agreed that we're going to live within this particular time frame. This piece of time, we've all agreed we're going to go by time. We all agree that we're all interacting in this country, this way, this state, this house, whatever. But it's an agreed upon reality. And there's a lot of power in that, because you have to understand that you don't always have to agree with everything around you.
Right.
Your consciousness is it. It's unique, and it is yours. And you get to decide.
You get to redescribe.
Mm-hmm. You
can.
You can.
Another point that is in a different way, context, your redescription of the universe is the most superpower of superpowers, because it allows you to control that which is most important, how it affects you. You look at the universe, and Tolle does this a lot, and your consciousness can decide how to describe it. And the default description, the unconscious description, can be incredibly damaging. It can be incredibly painful. It can cause you to spin forever, because these types of descriptions are operating at a subconscious level. They're coming in and impinging upon you and changing you, in some ways damaging you, because you haven't yet separated. Once you separate, once you realize that the consciousness exists solely and independently, the reality exists in an undefinable way, and the interface, how consciousness describes reality, is entirely within your control. You then nothing can touch you anymore. No matter what it is, you redescribe it. And in redescribing it, or describing it in the terms of true consciousness existing in reality, you take over. You now have the tool for all things. And you can get there through meditation. You can get there through Tolle, who sat on a park bench until he turned into I don't know what.
Enlightenment.
Suddenly enlightenment struck him, and along with a bologna sandwich, and he became Tolle. But he didn't. He just realized that his consciousness was free. He freed himself in the same way that the Buddha freed himself.
Right.
And that any of us can free ourselves.
And understanding that the nature of how we think, we've described it rather in great detail this past hour, on how you're looking at something and reinterpreting it into your idea of color, shape, and texture. But to understand that this is why you are always looking out and trying to find a reflection of yourself somewhere. Because this mechanism describes how you find pieces of yourself. And understanding that everything you see is not necessarily you. That discernment, understanding that everything out there is not you, in terms of this is, well, we all dress this way, or this is the new trend, or this is no. Who are you really? And to begin to identify with consciousness that observes is the first step. The third-person observer. In English, I remember they were talking first person, second person, third person observer. That's what you're aiming for here. Right. Without any voices of judgment or
connection, entanglement.
Well, just any judgment calls, let's say. You're just observing.
Right. They used to call it third-person omniscient. And that's the technical term, but it doesn't matter. There's another thing that's subtle here. When you separate your consciousness from that which is going on around you, you realize that there's a timelessness there. That once you realize that you can redescribe anything,
Right.
you actually stop reality, and you redescribe it at your leisure, and then
Right.
you let it start again.
Right.
And no time has passed. It seems as though you've done something miraculous. In real time, nothing. There's been no break. It's continuous. But in consciousness time, you get to stop, observe in the infinite moment, and it is the infinite now. That paradox is always true. It's the infinite now where you can redescribe. So the infinite now, it immediately tells you that you are not part of the reality. You're not one of the fields. You're not in the interaction. You get to separate into the infinite, redescribe, and then reconnect. And you do it all in no time.
In now time.
In now time, which is like no time. We understand this viscerally, but we don't understand the superpower of it. When you hit the superpower part of it, I'm being facetious, when you realize that you're a consciousness, which is perceiving reality and perceiving that it's perceiving reality, in that moment, you also have to take the corollary that you're perceiving it and you have control over your perception. Therefore, you have control over your description. Therefore, you have control over all reality. And it's an awesome and weighty thing.
It's pure observation, okay? It's not thinking about the fact that I'm perceiving this, then perceiving that, and this. No, you're getting lost in the sauce the minute you go into that.
Right.
It is in the being moment. You are here, completely present. There's nothing missing.
Exactly.
And in that moment, there is no time.
Nope.
You've touched on the 95% of what the universe actually is. And that's a mind blower.
But we can all do it.
Yes, because we are spirits that are touching down here in a body, soul, mind, heart.
Common dream.
This is part of the common dream.
Right. And you in abstracting, in residing in being, you have the power to redescribe at will. It is at will.
You choose what it is that you focus on, what
Yes.
you are observing, understanding that whatever it is you are observing is what you're letting in
Yes.
to your experience. It becomes part of the translation of what you believe you are.
and in that, it's volition. It's completely what you are letting in. It's not judgment. It's volition. It's an act of will. You in essence perceive, but you are being, perceiving, and you are through an act of will allowing certain things in.
It's like when we've all had this experience of like when you're in the science lab in high school or grammar school, and they give you the microscopes to play with. You put your slide in. And then you try to focus the dang thing because you're trying to observe whatever this piece of dust is or this water that you got from the pond or whatever. If there's something living in there. And that action of trying to get into focus, whatever this tiny little thing is understanding that that's an act of will. And then the focus, what comes into focus, is what you engage in. That is what this experience is down here. Whatever it is that you've decided that you're going to focus on and then see is really what you're engaging in. You decide what slides you're going to be putting in there.
Right.
Or you even prep the slides.
Yes. And no matter what, and then even though slides may come to you, to use your analogy, which you didn't prepare and you didn't necessarily go looking for, it doesn't matter. No matter what comes to you, whether you sought it or whether it appeared, you have the same ability to engage or not. This
Right.
is the superpower part of it.
Right.
Do I accept it? Do I engage with it or not? And you always have both options. You can say,
Yes, you can say no, or if you decide to engage and you hit a certain part, you can withdraw and say no, no longer.
right? And once you to go back to our theme, because we went a little far afield, but once you do trust yourself, you don't have this paralyzation. Once you understand that, that's the first step. Alan was taking them on the first step. You get to the final step, let's say, and you realize that it is an infinite time, it is an infinite being, and it is your will that allows you to
Right.
choose.
If you get caught up in whether or not you want to, that's where you paralyze yourself. So we go on. And we've come to the end of our show.
We have to go on.
And we have to go on. So I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael.
And thank you for listening.